Section of Sugar here. So you'll need an administrative account to do this. Once you get to the admin section, you'll go into role management. So you can see that Sugar has some default roles set up already, but we're going to create a custom role that we can use. So we'll mouse over the roles tab and select create role. So what we want to do is we're going to create a non-engineering role to prevent access to the projects module for non-engineers. Okay, so we'll save that. And the first screen that it takes us to is where we actually set up the type of access that this role is going to prevent. So a bit of an overview about roles. I think it's important to distinguish them between how teams are used in Sugar. As will become apparent very shortly, roles are used to prevent, or rather control, access and actions on different modules or parts of the module, whereas teams are used to control access to particular records within a module. So you can see we have all the modules available in SugarCRM down the left-hand side here. We can either provide access or remove it. So if I click this account one here, I can disable access, I can explicitly enable it, or I can just leave it alone. Oftentimes you'll leave most of these unset and only edit the ones that you want to change. So as we mentioned, we're going to scroll down here to the projects module, and we just want to go ahead and disable access to this module for non-engineers. So anybody else in the system that I assign to this role will no longer have access to the projects module at all. So now that we've set that, I'm going to cruise up here and save the changes. You can see that once you save it, it highlights it in red, so that if you're making some complex adjustments, it'll be a little bit easier to tell what changes you've made for this role. So now that we've created the role, the next step would be to assign it, or assign users to this role rather. We'll go back to the list view, choose the non-engineering role. So there's two ways to assign users to roles. You can either go directly to the role, scroll to the very bottom, and then select them from the subpanel here. Okay, so assuming I'm an engineer and I don't want my boss to see the projects I'm working on, I could assign my boss to this role, and he'll no longer have access to the project module. You can see him here, and as soon as you assign them, there's no need to save. It automatically creates the relationship for you. So I'm going to open up a new session in another browser and log in as that other user. Okay, so now we've logged in as the other user, Danny's boss, which you can see right here. And you'll notice that I do not have access to the projects module. So we're going to hop back to my other user account and we'll see that I do. Here I have the projects module. I'll go ahead and go to the list view for that. Okay, so we see one project here, and when going to the my boss's account, we see that he doesn't have access. So I'm going to remove him from this role so that we can see that he does have access without it. So now we'll go ahead and look at the other way to remove a role from a user. You can go directly to the users module, select the user that you want to edit, access tab, and you'll see here, this is another way to view the access that a user has. So if a user is assigned to several roles, it can be challenging to have a view into what exactly they can and cannot do. But if you come to the user's record and look at the access tab, it'll add up all the differences for everybody. And roles are additive so that the most restrictive role prevails. So even if I had another role on this account called provide access to projects module, as long as the user still had this role also, his access would still be disabled even if the other role explicitly gave it to him. So oftentimes this can be an issue because you may have a section of employees in your company that you want to restrict access to a particular module for all of them, but there's maybe one guy or one woman in that group who does in fact need access to it, and your first inclination may be to create an additional role and provide explicit access, but that's not going to work. So what you need to do is actually duplicate the role that they're in that's preventing access, this non-engineering role here. You can go I'm going to open it in a new tab. I could duplicate this role and call it non-engineering Susie. And then what we would do is remove Susie from this role and wait for the screen to refresh. And then add her to that new role that we duplicated. And then we'd make the changes on the new role. So here I could go back, change this to explicitly enable it, and maybe the other thing that engineers or non-engineers didn't have access to is the bug tracker. So we'll save that. Now that this user is assigned non-engineering Susie, this kind of special edge case engineering role, I'm going to refresh so that we update the access. We'll see that she still doesn't have access to the bug tracker, but she does have access to projects. So that's how you go about achieving that. I'm going to remove this custom non-engineering role we made and add back the original one to get back to what we were working on. Scroll back down. We're going to select the first one that we created. It gets added back on. And okay, so what we want to do is we're going to remove my boss from this role altogether so that I can log back in as him and demonstrate that he has access to the projects module, and then when we add this role, it'll remove that access. So one important thing to be aware of when you're working with roles is that you need to log the user out after you've made changes to roles and have them log back in order for them to be reliable and take effect. So we'll log out of that. Oops. Okay, so when Danny's boss does not have the non-engineering role, you can see that he has full access to the projects module. But if we want to set up the CRM in such a way that he doesn't have access, then we would go ahead and add him back to that role. Okay, so as you can see, because I'm logged in, my role privileges are saved in the session, so we need to destroy that before it'll have any effect on the CRM. And now once again, we've effectively restricted access to the projects module.